Hi there, BookTube! My name is Cristina and today I'm very excited to be here with the second part of my anticipated releases for 2018. If you're curious to see the first part of this video, I will leave the link down below, and in that video I covered all the new releases that I was expecting from January till March, pretty much. And in this video I would like to address all the new releases that made me excited from March till, let's say, mid or end of May, I believe, and I have 11 titles. They're all a first book in a series or a standalone, so I've not considered the books about which I'm excited that are like the second or so on books in a series that I already started. And without further ado, since we have 11 titles to cover, let me start. The first title that I have is Furyborn, and it's the first in a series or a trilogy that is called Imperium, I believe, and it's a book by Claire Legrand, and this is supposed to be a fantasy story with a very beautiful cover actually, and this is a story of two different women in different centuries who are there is a prophecy about them telling that one of them will be the queen of the sun and light and the other one the queen of blood and destruction. So both of them are trying to do their best to fight for their destiny and for the world. And from what I got, the story starts with the first woman saving her friend or her beloved, I'm not sure, and in doing so she shows an amazing ability and skills in handling magic and a very unusual kind of skills, so she needs to prove that she's the good kind of queen by going through a trial. So I don't know, this is a very interesting premise for a story, two female characters, and this is something that I'm definitely into, and strong women, so again, absolutely cannot wait to read it. The second title that I have here is again a fantasy, and probably this one is a standalone, and it's Onyx and Ivory by Mindy Arnett. And here the title combined with the cover definitely attracted my attention, and this is a fantasy story about a female and a male protagonist. From what I got, the male protagonist is one of the princes of the country, and he needs to demonstrate his skills, and he's not supposed to take the throne, but maybe something will happen to change everything. And the female protagonist is known as a traitor because she's the daughter of a traitor, and she works as a kind of a postman woman. But this skill is, and this kind of a profession is very dangerous, because at night there are horrible creatures and dragons going on in this kind of realm and kingdom. But she has magical skills, so she has kind of a weapon to defend herself. But at a certain point in the story something happens and the two characters meet up, I believe. So one of the princes and a traitor, and the daughter of a traitor, let's say. And you know me, I love a good fantasy story with a nice title, with a good premise, and probably it will be a standalone, which is quite rare in fantasies, so I cannot wait to see what it will got me. The third title that I have here actually is a kind of a contemporary slash fantasy kind of story, and I put it in here just because this is a lovely concept and I love some fluffy, fun books to read every now and then. And this is A Date with Darcy, and it will be the first one in a duology or a series called Bookish Boyfriends, and I will read to you directly from Goodreads. Mary Lee Campbell, 16 years old, thinks boys are better in books. Chivalry is dead, and there'd be nothing more romantic than having just one guy woo her like the heroes in classic stories. She's about to get the chance to test these daydreams when she, her best friend Eliza, and her youngest sister Rory transfer into Reginald R. Hero High. where all their fantasies come true, often with surprising consequences. And I just believe that this will be something that will make me laugh and cringe a little bit, and why not? Maybe I will enjoy it at the end. Next one is again a fantasy, and it's the first one in a duology, I believe, and it's The Diminished by Caitlin Sage Patterson. This book has a very interesting concept for me, because in this world everyone is born with a twin, so there is a twin for everyone except for those who are single-borns, and those people are destined to rule, and this is the case of one of the protagonists. He is supposed to become the next ruler after the current queen, and he is a single-born. But on the other side we have the Diminished, and the Diminished are those who were born with a twin, but due to unfortunate circumstances lost his or her twin, and so they become the Diminished, and the society rejects them. And so this is our second protagonist. So we have a single-born and a Diminished, and again we have two characters that at a certain point of the story will meet up, and I believe that it will be quite an interesting ride, and dealing with siblings and with such a particular kind of world building, I hope that the story will be very, very interesting. Next one is again a first book, and it's a fantasy, probably a historical kind of fantasy, and it's From Unseen Fire by Cass Morris, and it's the first book in the Advent cycle. And I cannot wait to actually read this book, because just look at the cover, how beautiful it is, and this is the main reason why I discovered about this book, due to the cover. And here is the premise from Goodreads. The dictator is dead, long live the republic. But whose republic will it be? Senators, generals and elemental mages vie for the power to shape the future of the city of Avon. And I really don't need to know anything else. This is a very beautiful cover. We are talking about a republic. Before there was a dictator, there will be elemental magic. I'm sold. Next one is a standalone, and it's a retelling of a well-known Shakespearean story play, and it's The Queens of Ynys Lear, of course from King Lear. I've never read King Lear, so that's the reason why I will definitely wait to read this book. I was just attracted by it because I've heard about it here and there on BookTube, and the cover is very, very beautiful, and it is supposed to be a retelling with two sisters who are fighting to get the power. And I think that it will be a very interesting read, but before I would love to read, of course, the original play by Shakespeare, and then in the future I will get to this book. Next is a middle grade, and a lot of people are already reading it around BookTube, and it's Arusha and the End of Time, and it's the first book in the Pandava Quartet. And this book is one of the books that Rick Riordan is right now promoting, and it's mixed with Indian mythology, it's a fantasy, it's a middle grade, and I just know that it will be amazing, a wonderful ride, and I cannot wait to read it. The cover is so beautiful, and I hope that the story will be just as magical as all of the Rick Riordan stories are, even if in this case it's written by Roshani Chokshi. I'm not sure about the pronunciation, but I'm sure that the story will be lovely. Next is a first book, again in a series, I believe, again fantasy, you know me, and it's Torn, the first book in the Unraveled Kingdom series or trilogy. And this one got my attention because the protagonist, the main protagonist, she is a dressmaker, and she's able to weave into her dresses magic or curses and so on. So she ends up being involved in this kind of a political upheaval, and she ends up becoming kind of a traitor to the country, and this probably will be just a very interesting story to read. And the light keeps changing just because thunderstorm coming and going, I cannot do anything about it. And the next title that I have is Stolen Enchantress, and it's the first installment in the Forbidden Forest series or trilogy. And again, the cover is so simple but very beautiful. And this is a story of a girl who gets into the Forbidden Forest, and nobody ever went out of it, but she did. She goes in to save her sister and she comes back, but the monster inside of the forest, from what I got, now has his full attention on this girl and he wants her back or something like that. So it's a bit of a fairy tale-esque story. I think that it may become a bit scary and haunting and interesting, and I hope that it will be very fairy tale-like. So we will see. Next is Freyas Daughter, and it's the first book in Wild Women series or trilogy. And this one got my attention because it deals with a lot of different magical creatures, not the usual kind of fairies or let's say vampires or so on. Here we have actually huldras, mermaids, succubae, rusalki and harpies, so I'm very interested in it, and the title Freyas Daughter, Wild Women got my attention. And the story is about a girl whose sister again ends up missing. Here we have a pattern, and the protagonist is one of the wild women and she needs to save her sister, but to do so she needs to bring back an old power and to try to make cooperate all of the wild women who are not supposed to be very friendly to one another, from what I got from Goodreads. So I'm not sure if I will enjoy this kind of story, because I don't know, the cover here reminds me a lot about angsty YA kind of paranormal books, but I hope to be very much mistaken and that all of those different kind of magical creatures will give a huge plus to this book. And the very last book that I have here is Captive by Gabrielle Estres, and again a very beautiful cover, very simple but very beautiful. This is, I believe, a fantasy story, probably a Beauty and the Beast retelling or 1001 Nights retelling, something like that, because we have a very beautiful protagonist and she's being kept captive by a king, I think that he's a king, a prince. He's supposed to be ruthless and cruel and so on, but they somehow fall in love, but he knows that he will have to kill her by the end. So I believe that it's a mix of the two fairy tales or something like that. And this book is quite interesting for me because it comes from a story that was born on the internet, on Wattpad, and now it's being published, so I'm very curious to see how is the final version of the story. So these are the 11 books that I'm very highly anticipating, and let me know down below if you've already read some of them, since some of them are already out there, and just let me know if you're interested in some of these titles, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye! Ciao!